Hello everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for this tutorial. I'm going to be showing you how I make my fabric covered inserts, and I'm going to be using this quilt scrap that I have over here. And so first I'm just trimming my paper down. You can do any size you want. I'm making a standard size insert, so I'm going to about 4.33 inches by 8.25 inches. And this is just like a regular cardstock paper, sort of like a medium weight, so you don't need something like super heavy. I think that if it's like a thinner but sturdy paper, your cover will be more easy to work with, more pliable. So now I'm just sort of folding my quilt scrap in a couple different ways, trying to figure out which way I want the fabric to be on the cover, which side I want on the front and which side I want to be on the back. So once I figure that out, I realized that I need to trim off this extra yarn bit just to get rid of some of the bulk. When you place your paper base back into the fabric, make sure the fold is on the outside so that when you fold it back over, it'll just easily go with your crease that you already have. Now you can use any sort of clip for this next part. I have just been using paper clips. I have them readily available and they are just easy for me to use, but you could use a stronger one. And I just fold over the edge of the fabric there over the edge of my fabric. Now when you're doing this, it's important not to tug on it too tightly, otherwise your journal cover will sort of bend in a weird way from all the pressure from the stitching. So just fold it over gently. Make sure it is snug but not tight, if that makes sense. Like you want it lined up nice so there's a neat crisp edge, but just don't pull it too hard. As I'm working, you'll see me fold the cover back up, and I'm just making sure that I like the way that everything looks so that I can easily readjust before I stitch, because it's easier to go back and fix a mistake now than have to rip off the stitches and sew all over again. Before I put the cover through my sewing machine, I also like to trim off the excess fabric from the edges, and I do this at an angle going in towards the center of the journal, and this just gets rid of some of the bulk so that later when I put the paper lining on the inside of the cover, it's not just like all funky and chunky. This next part's hard for me to explain in words, so I show you again what I do in slow motion, but I take the edge of the fabric here and I just sort of fold it into itself to make like a nice neat little edge there, sort of like if you were wrapping a present. So it just gets folded up and under to create a nice edge. So now I'm just going to stitch completely around the edge of the cover, leaving about 1/4 of an inch, probably even a little bit less. This is kind of just a personal preference, so you can use whatever distance you want from your edge to your stitch. So as I get to the clips, I obviously remove them. Sometimes the little edges of the clip will get kind of caught up on the fabric, but just go slow, take your time, and remove them carefully so you don't puncture your fabric. Something else that I want to mention, as my sewing machine is moving through the cover, I kind of use my fingers to just gently sort of keep the fabric taut against the edge of the paper. And again, we're not pulling. You don't want it to be tight, otherwise it will warp your cover. So just, again, go slow and use your fingers to keep the fabric nice and taut against the edge, and it'll give your cover a very sort of clean and uniform look to it. here at the other end of my stitch, I just sort of go back and forth over the stitching a couple of times to keep the stitch held in place. So now my quilt scrap is successfully stitched to the paper base cover, and I'm ready to start adding in some of the extra little elements. I have some lacy stuff, some sequins, and I'm also going to put on another little scrap. This is completely optional. I just wanted to show that if you are getting a fabric and some parts of it you don't like, you can use something that you already have on hand to enhance your fabric. So now I have all my little extra bits and I got my little fabric scraps, so I'm just going to play around with it a little bit to see what I want to add and where I want to add it. When you're adding a fabric scrap on top of another fabric, if you want to, you can use like a glue stick to hold it in place. I don't recommend using like a very viscous glue because you don't want it to peek through the fabric. I'm not doing that. I just hold it in place with my fingers. That has worked well for me. But if you're just starting out, I do recommend just like a regular school glue, and that will hold the fabric in place while you stitch, and it won't give it like bubbles or weird little, I don't know, creases. Here I'm adding another textile. This is just a bit of repurposed sari silk ribbon, and this will just give it a little more pop of a pop of color on the cover. So next I am picking through this lacy material that I have, and I'm just going to hand rip little bits of it off to collage onto the cover. So now I'm just sort of playing around with the lace. Harvey woke up from his nap. He says hello. So I'm just playing around with the lace a little bit to get it into a place that I find to be visually appealing. And once that's finished, I will be ready to stitch these pieces to the cover as well. And again, I am just holding these extra bits down with my fingers, but feel free to use an adhesive of some sort if you are just starting out, or if it makes you a little more comfortable working with these materials. So once those are securely stitched to the cover, I'm going to go for my giant sequins here and just pick out a few that I like and arrange them. And then I will just run these straight through the sewing machine. So that's basically it for this part of the tutorial. I am going to be doing this in 2 parts. I don't know when I'm going to be able to film the second part. I still have this journal cover. It is actually spoken for already. Somebody has purchased it. So yeah, when I have a little bit of extra time, I will be continuing working on this. I'm going to film it so you can just see everything from start to finish. So I hope this wasn't confusing, and I really hope that this helps some of you. And I'm sure there's a lot of different techniques for making a fabric covered insert. This is just, this is my go-to. This is how I do every single one. So thanks again for joining me. Thanks for watching my tutorial, and I'll see you all back here soon, hopefully. Bye.